This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, and yes, I sent your girl a dick pic. Today we're going to be taking a look at Fleming Storage Unit 125, Dedicated Deviant by Pity. So before we get into this story, right off the bat we do have to address the fact that the title is misspelled. Now that doesn't leave a particularly good impression, and it doesn't bode well for what the story might hold in store for us. But obviously people who live in glass houses can't throw stones. I am one to misspell things as well. But again, I think you should be able to get the title right. I think that that's important. But let's get right into this unit and see what it has in store. When Lenny had called me up about the unit and told me about his brother's passing and that he had never known the unit had existed until today, when he finally went back into his emails after 2 months, I thought it would be a shitfest, as in, there being too much shit and not enough time. The metal door clanked open as dread wound up in my stomach. So we have some run-on sentences there, but we have a lot of establishing information in that paragraph as well. This could just use slight reworking to be a series of smaller sentences, but we know that there's a brother who didn't know after his brother passed that there was a unit to begin with. So this is going to, be full of mysteries. And let's see what mysteries this unit has in store for us. Thankfully, there wasn't a lot in the unit. There was a nice rosewood bed desk set. Rosewood bedroom set. Desk, bed frame, nightstand, mirror, dresser, a mattress, an old dryer, 3 black cartons, milk cartons that were filled with worn vinyl, and a few comic books, 2 cardboard boxes, and 2 white trash bags. So we have a lot of detail about what's in here. I immediately get a sense of what's going on. I was confused when it said 3 black milk cartons. I think, I don't know, maybe if that's a different lexicon than other people use, but I always say milk crates. That's what they're referring to, quite obviously. So I'm not sure. If Adrian had been here, he would have moved the heavy stuff we could have moved the heavy stuff together. Or maybe just him, because I'm weak as fuck. But now here I was in front of a unit with half of the shit I couldn't move with my strong-ass boyfriend at work. And he couldn't leave because his boss is a cunt. With the verbiage used here, the mention of Lenny's brother, and Adrian, and all of these people, all of these male names, I am assuming that our narrator is male and just happens to be gay and has a boyfriend. That's my best guess. But moving forward, we are getting some information about who our narrator is. They're kind of foul-mouthed. They're self-deprecating about the fact that they're weak. These are important things. I'm already going to assume just that our narrator is a guy and is gay and is a twink and then has a buff boyfriend who's able to lift heavy stuff. Who does lift? That's just me projecting what I want onto this story. So I walk into the unit and I'm trying to think of a moving company or something, or if I may actually be able to move some of the stuff myself. Feeling defeated before trying, but I notice something on the far side of the desk. A little clunky phrasing here. Maybe if you speak that right, deliver those lines right, spoken, those feel right. And I do get a strong sense of our narrator's voice, and who they are. But I'm not sure where the line is on that. Feeling defeated before even trying, but I notice, you can deliver it correctly, but it feels kind of strange written out that way. I think you might want to clear up that confusion by being, feeling defeated even before trying, but I did, but I didn't I'm fuzzy on that. There was a painting of Ivan the Terrible, and then I noticed 2 whole stacks of paintings leaning up neatly against the wall. So the guy was into art. I opened a drawer on the desk and was met with colored pencils, oil pastels, a metal tin of drawing pencils, and a small worn notebook. So he was an artist too. I eyed the notebook. I wanted to know more about this guy, but I couldn't just take it and read it without permission or something. I didn't even have the right to read it. So these are very small paragraphs. There's line breaks every, 2 to 3 sentences, and they're very long sentences, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could just be a different writing style. It's not a very traditional one. It's a very amateur feeling one, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would like a little more broken up here. It seems like every paragraph break is an idea, just as it should be, but they're much shorter ideas than what you would get from more typical classical writing styles. And again, I'm always open to people trying new kinds of things, not necessarily being all academic. Francis Bacon, the artist, talked about how detrimental it would have been to his art career had he gone to art school, where he had all of these things formalized. And it's an interesting subject because we don't all need to be painters, but we all do need to be literate. We do all need to be able to read for our daily lives, to take care of responsibilities and everything. So learning to literary literacy is very important to functioning, but at what point do you get formalized into a writing style from your teachers kind of forcing this upon you, a culture forcing this style of writing upon you? I think that we're very conditioned to wince whenever we see these sort of short paragraphs. Now, that said, it's very important that we be able to communicate ideas effectively, even if they are shorter and not traditional. So even, painting, it's important to be able to think for yourself, but, you don't need to paint is the idea I'm getting at here. And some of this language is a little messy and unclear. So, I didn't even have the right to read it. Well, we already mentioned that you didn't feel that you had the right to read it. So putting the even in the I didn't even have the right to read it, that entire sentence sentence fragment can be taken out of the sentence. It could have just been, I wanted to know more about this guy, but I couldn't just take it and read it without his permission or something. That feels like enough information being communicated. Pressing on. I looked to the paintings. They would give me more insight into who this man was. Curiosity burned in my stomach as I looked through the paintings, but this was the first time 3 years of art history in high school and a minor in art history was useful in a while. Okay, so our narrator is literate in the world of art. The first painting was of Ivan the Terrible by Victor Vinestov. Ivan stood tall with a harsh glare and red rings under his eyes. Not the best of Vinetsov's work, in my opinion, but not a bad example either. The next one was one I didn't recognize. It was a pre-Raphaelite portrait of a black-haired woman. She was surrounded by Hawthorne and Monkshood. The third was another one I didn't recognize. It was a romantic era painting of a black-haired man asleep by a lake as a wolf crept up on him. So it's important to know that this criticism is coming from a good place. You have to know that characters can be nuanced, but in a short story, you don't have a whole lot of time to establish who your character is. And at the beginning, we have a very crass person, speaking very bluntly, speaking using cursing. This person doesn't seem to be a studious person I wouldn't imagine this person gets straight A's, in school when they were in school, but they have a wealth of knowledge about art. They're using terms like pre-Raphaelite, and then there were terms where I'm like, oh shit, I'm in art school and I don't know the term Hawthorne and Monkshood, and it turns out that those are just plants, so it's perfectly fine that I didn't know those terms. And then also saying Romantic era paintings, to be able to identify something as the Romantic era just from looking at it without having information about it, they're very confident in that. They're not even saying fitting of the Romantic era or a Romantic era style painting. They're saying, no, this is from the Romantic era. That information is giving us a very different picture than what was established early on. And it could be that this character is exactly that, didn't get straight A's, but really does have a wealth of knowledge about art. Those two things don't need to be contradictory, but if that's the case, maybe just a little bit of a hint that this person has art knowledge before that, and then maybe scale back the crassness just a little bit. Maybe. These are thoughts to have. Not necessarily an edict that it needs to be this way, but these are thoughts to have swirling around your head. I gently set the paintings back. There were a few more, but I wanted to take a look around first, and that meant poking around the desk. It mostly had nice art supplies and nice paper, random things, gray cotton gloves, spearmint gum, black and blue pens, playing cards. I do not house any blue pens around my house. Black pens only. That's the proper style. Playing cards, sunflower stamps. Sunflower stamps. Don't know what that means. I guess stamps with sunflowers on them. Crisp envelopes, paper clips, and rubber bands. Normal things you'd find in a desk. I had to remember to get duct tape so they wouldn't fly open. Okay, practical information about moving. It's important that you have some sort of tape to tape down, desks, drawers, and that kind of thing. Just makes moving stuff more practical. Just listing off mundane things is giving me an idea that this desk is lived in, that this desk is used. It's telling me about the person who was sitting at that desk and was using it every day. I did just make the effort of binging sunflower stamps, and yeah, it's just stamps with sunflowers on them. If you bing them, you'll recognize them. I couldn't help but pick up the notebook. It was a small notebook with black covers, worn by age. Maybe it was a diary? I shoved it back in the drawer, my cheeks red with shame. Fuck, I couldn't read a dead man's diary, but it wasn't wrong to look through his art collection. Okay, so that's a sort of a weird reaction. Like, yeah, maybe it's a little uncouth to look through a dead man's journal, but I gotta be honest with you, and maybe people could tell me I'm morally reprehensible, but I really wouldn't feel that bad about it. I probably wouldn't be curious about it, but I wouldn't be torn up about that. Dead. If someone wants to read through my journals when I'm dead, I mean, I don't have any, but if they wanted to go through and peruse my dildo collection or whatever, like I wouldn't care. I'm dead. I went back to the again, my standards, who knows, but our character is being a little dramatic about it, I think, maybe that's just me. I went back to the paintings and continued looking through them. It was mostly just portraits of men and women with dark hair and big eyes from various different eras and styles. Some were just cut out of bigger paintings. The paintings got more and more risque, with some were just static, straight up erotic, full nudes with spread legs and lusty looks. I didn't want to spend my time looking through some old guy's fine art porn collection, but I fucking knew I needed to. I was too deep. I was in too deep, I think, maybe. But anyway, bearing that in mind, that is a very interesting subject. Eroticism in classical painting and what that was, and, there was just straight up pornography at the time, which was, still life paintings of, nude men and women splayed out. Not the kind of stuff that you see in art museums. Not even the risque things that you see in art museums. A lot of those are taking the human form and exemplifying them, not necessarily in an erotic way, but just saying, in a godly way of like, look how great the human form is, and that God made this, and that's great. But there is straight up fine art, porn, especially paintings and stuff of that nature. And then you have your blurry stuff in between where it's a little bit of that and a little bit porny and still kind of, fits within the context of a art gallery or art museum. So just so you know, that's a subject I think is interesting. And this person is playing with that. Finally, I got to the last two paintings, The Rape of Ganymede by Gabriel Ferrier and The Abduction of Ganymede by Eustace Lesueur. In Ferrier's painting, Ganymede was draped over Zeus, a look of sad acceptance on his face. In Suri's painting, he was clenching his fist, his face contorted in shock. I set the paintings back down. I readjusted I always read that as readjusted. I readjusted my coat as a cold sweat crept down my back, and I looked up and down the unit. I grabbed one of the milk cartons and both trash bags and started back to the truck. I put the milk carton and the bags in the back seat. I pulled out my phone and tried to call Adrian again. It went right to voicemail. I shoved my phone back into my pocket, frustrated. I moved the second carton and one of the boxes. Trying to lift the second box was like trying to move a fucking boulder. And all the other shit in there was way too heavy. So this is a short story, and again, it really hasn't been relevant since the beginning, but I should bring this up. Lenny, we know, is the person who had a brother that passed. We don't know the name of the brother, and we do know that Adrian is alive, but it's unclear who Adrian is who Adrian is. It's not clear if Adrian is our narrator's boyfriend or what. I would assume not. If they're calling Adrian, why would they call Adrian? Adrian is stuck at work because their boss is a cunt. So I think this is a reoccurring thing, and maybe we as a community should kind of look at this on how to establish certain information early on in your story without feeling like it's a text dump. I think people want to avoid that, but it's important to establish who everyone is and who these names are. That stuff I think is fuzzy here as well. And again, I feel like I'm really getting down on this story. I think there's a lot of stuff to pick out, but in terms of narrative, in terms of the structure of this generally, I'm pretty interested to see where this is going, and I don't want to give people the impression that I'm not. This is instructive that we have stories like this to help deal with, point out some of these problems, and I'm glad that we can do this and hopefully grow as a community. So, I sat on the box and shut my eyes and tried to think of a way to solve this, but my mind kept going back to the notebook. Something about this was off. Not just this unit, but the whole place gave me a weird vibe. Okay, so that's a perfectly normal thing. You're in a situation that's unfamiliar, and you don't know why, but you're getting a strange feeling. So let's press on from there. Lenny didn't say anything else about why the place was shutting down other than, there was a bad accident, Cal. You gotta be real careful these days. A hand touched my shoulder, and my heart almost jumped out of my mouth. I jumped up from the box, looking at the person who touched me. Adrian stood there, almost shocked, looking as I was. So that's, again, phrasing is clunky there. Adrian stood there, almost shocked, looking as I was. Should be, Adrian stood there, looking almost as shocked as I was. Fuck, Adrian, you scared the shit out of me, I said out of breath. Adrian wilted back like a dying flower. That's nice language there. Geez, Cal, I'm sorry. Suddenly, I felt like the biggest asshole on the face of the earth. The kind of asshole that made his fucking amazing boyfriend feel like an asshole. I think we all know that feeling. Making someone feel like an asshole for some reason. Don't be sorry. I just got startled. But fuck am I glad you're here. How did your boss cut you loose? So Adrian is the boyfriend, okay. He didn't. It's my lunch break, so we gotta do this quick. It's just this? Yeah, there's already some stuff in the truck. Alright, a friend is coming down to help, and she's probably got a van, so we probably won't have to make a second trip. That dryer is going to be a pain in the ass, though. Indeed, dryers are always a giant pain in the ass. And so we have another friend showing up to help out with a truck. Alright. We moved all the stuff we could. Then Adrian's friend, Teresa, came and they moved the rest. They finally moved the desk last. They hoisted it up a drawer under the bottom of the desk, flew open, and a cascade of papers flew down. Heck, Adrian mumbled. It's alright. I'll get it, just get the desk into the truck. I crouched down to clean up the papers and realized that they were studies of the paintings that were in the unit and some original sketches. I looked through a few of the studies until I found a full study of Ferrier's Rape of Ganymede, but it didn't look like him. He was shorter, had a thicker body, bigger butt, but the face hadn't been drawn and the hair was only half drawn. I saw a date in the corner of the paper, 8/4/17. My heart dropped. Lenny said it was the day he died. This could have been the last thing he put into this world. I held it farther back to get a better look and noticed a paper clip on the top right. I flipped over the paper to see what it was. I studied the picture for a second before something clicked. It was me. The picture was of me. It was from one of my first interviews as an author when I lived in New York. This was even before I met Adrian. There was another picture under it. I lifted it. It was me after I had gotten out of the shower. I was completely naked, my back to the camera. This was the bathroom in my old apartment. Okay, so I think it is becoming relevant whether our narrator is a man or a woman, and establishing these things early on, again, kind of difficult, but might be pivotal later on. And here we have, these studies of the Rape of Ganymede, but with a thicker body, bigger butt. Again, probably evocative of the fact that it seems Lenny wasn't the one who died. Lenny said that was the day he died. So Lenny's brother was probably stalking our narrator in some fashion and drawing inspiration from them and spying on them. These things are important. This is pulling me in. I'm interested to see where this is going, especially the idea that they would be using them for artistic reference and pulling classical images together, like the Rape of Ganymede, classical ideas like that, and, shoving those in with a contemporary obsession with the person that you know. That's an interesting idea, I think. And I want to know where this goes. We're getting a little more detail about our author originally living in New York, and perhaps Lenny's brother was there as well. Adrian wasn't in the picture yet. I'm assuming, since Ganymede is a fictitious male character, that our narrator is male also. And also, it's very homoerotic imagery, the Rape of Ganymede. The image that comes to my mind is the Rubens painting. But anyway, my brain is that word? I always don't know if it's word or world, if there's like an invisible L there or whatever. Anyway, my brain whirred like an overheated computer. My mouth was dry and my hands were heavy, knees weak, arms. My mouth was dry and my hands shook as I shifted through more of the drawings. All of them were me. All the paintings in the unit, all the black-haired and pale men and women. Were they all just stand-ins for me? So even the Ivan the Terrible was a stand-in for you? And here they're telling us that the gender is irrelevant, that all of the characters in some way were inspired by our narrator in this story. And that's an interesting idea, that all of them have a certain je ne sais quoi about their face or their body that makes them think that that's them. That could be them having a paranoid delusion, but then again, they have this weird evidence there of the camera pointed towards them in their old apartment in their bathroom in New York. That's crazy. My breathing came out as a dry rasp and sweat ran down my brow as I tried to figure out what the fuck was going on even when I knew what this was. I started walking down the corridor of the units. I started to slowly gain speed as I felt my eyes grow damp and spite rise. I think it says R-A-S-E, but I think it should be rise in my throat. I was sprinting by the time I turned the corner and saw Adrian and Teresa about to move the desk into the van. When I got close enough, I yanked the bottom drawer out of the desk. Ooh, that is a very vivid image. You're having this kind of panic attack and you don't know what's going on and you're all confused and worried, and these other two people are trying to help you do this favor, and then there's just this very awkward moment of when they're hoisting up the desk and you pull that out, the drawer out, and let's continue on from there. Papers exploded from the drawer and I kept hearing Adrian ask what was wrong, but I had to see what was in there. More pictures. They were from okay, so alright, that explains some stuff. Lenny's dead brother didn't necessarily need to be there. They were stalking them from social media. More pictures. They were from social media, both public and private. Interviews, yearbooks, and then there were the endless sketches of me doing anything from lounging around half naked, from being carried off by some Zeus or king-like figure. I'm sure Adrian and Teresa had both seen the pictures and the drawings because they stopped asking if I was okay. I quickly stood up, my fists clenched. I turned around and began to stomp, run back to the unit. I heard Adrian call my name, but I didn't listen. The only thing was raging through my mind. Was fuck this. I stomped back. That's some clunky phrasing, but I get what they're going for. But they need to clarify it. That it should be something along the lines of perhaps my mind was raging. My only thought was fuck this. Something like that. Maybe clearer. I stomped back to the unit, and with one last glance into a cold, empty space, I slammed the metal door shut. Wow. Okay, so this was a roller coaster of quality. I really like the climax of the story. Beginning, kind of need to clarify some stuff. The short paragraphs, after reading all of this, I can pass the judgment of saying, yes, this feels like how our narrator is. This was a stylistic choice. I don't know whether the author writes this way typically or not, but for our narrator, the person in the story who is giving us this first-person narrative, this is how they speak, and this is the best way to get across their words, I would say. These short, staccato paragraphs, maybe a bigger, more full paragraph would be nice to punctuate it every once in a while, but even when the paragraphs go down, the line indentations go down to a single sentence, it feels like it's intentional, especially later on. The climax of this story, this person, we don't see what happens after all of this and how they recover from it. They just know that this person who they're trying to do a favor for, in their death, this person that they're trying to do a favor for who has died is a crazy stalker, and we don't know the connection of why or how this relationship, how they know each other or whatnot, but this in upon itself is just a perfect cliffhanger to leave on. I especially like, this again, these units are all about baggage and stuff like that, and so the ending is very often, I close the unit, and I close that chapter of my life. And this one isn't that. It's less of a denouement. It's less of a leveling out and ending the story comfortably. This is a very boom, story over. And that, I think, is a nice detail, that this is a different ending than a lot of the other endings in the stories. So bearing that in mind, I think a lot of work needs to be put into this to clarify these little things here and there that add up to be a significant detriment to the story. But the story itself, the plot, the characters, I get an idea of who Adrian is. I get an idea of who our narrator is, though the gender ambiguous name Cal, I'm starting to think maybe that's intentional, that we don't know the gender of our narrator. These things weigh on my mind, but I really enjoyed this one. Definitely let me know what you think down in the comments. Seeing some of the criticism by Rika84 and, echoing some of the things I was saying, ambiguity about who the narrator is, who the brother, like, naming convention really needs to be sorted out in this. But overall, I love the ending. Now, if you enjoyed that, consider helping out the community and supporting my channel. You can support the community by conversing in the comments below and going to toospooky.com. That's TOO spooky.com for more original horror stories. While you're at it, try your hand at short horror yourself. You can support me by liking this video and following me on Twitter and Tumblr, links down in the description. Thank you so much for your time, and now on to our sponsor at this non-moment in time, which is Big White Bud Boys. Big White Bud Boys, as made popular by Ganymede.